fact, almost all my childhood I spent in the Pioneer Camp Spring. My father worked there as a boss. Of course, not immediately, he became boss. First the teacher, then the assistant manager, then the supervisor. But it happened soon after I was born. So, as far as I remember summer I always rested there. Recently, 26 years later, I visited it again. The camp does not work. They say it was bought by new Kazakh businessmen for some purposes, and the camp is like an orphan, overgrown with grass to the waist, silent, useless, abandoned. And as a child, the camp was small, cozy, well kept. He was seething with life, humming like a beehive, rang with children's voices. 15 kilometers from the city, on the bank of the Ishim River, there was a beautiful corner of wildlife, called Crow Island, provided at the full disposal of children. There, surrounded by white birch trees, stood 4 camps: Spring, City Meatpacking Plant, Young Railwaymen, guess which organization, Wave from Akhma, and Birch, from plant named after S.M. Kirov. These 4 camps all the time competed with each other, in sports, in amateur performances, in the military patriotic game, Zarnita. Therefore, there was a healthy competition between them. Our camp, Spring, I considered the best. Small, cozy, located around a central glade. He didn't look so formal and beautiful. There was no asphalt, brick buildings and swimming pool, but civilization was forgotten and the closeness of nature was felt. In our camp there were only 7 groups of children in it. During a season about 300 children had a rest, and it was famous for very good food because belonged to meat factory and children were very well fed. Prepare delicious, the portions are large, obtrusive, and never refused to supplement. For this we had the nickname, Fat Meat Factory. Graduation. Sausage, lemonade. A young railwayman was the biggest camp, and we teased its inhabitants with greedy children, or oilmen. Birch was overwhelming. In our view, wealth is an amusement park and they're free riding on huge roundabouts and swings. And rest their children recalled Beatles. Camp 4, Wave. Something special is not was famous for was the underground nickname of drowned. Children of different camps, especially among themselves, not to fight, but after some of the sports events, fans of the losing team actively shouted these offensive nicknames of the winners. Those, as a rule, did not remain in debt, and often it came to an easy spontaneous struggle. Counselors took away fighters and quickly dispersed in different directions. And here is, with 4 years, I rested in our camp. At first, my father and mother were brought there for the weekend, and when I grew up, I lived on a common basis and considered it a great bad luck that my father was with me around the clock, and my mother, on the weekend, although most of the children envied me. Dad in Pioneer Camp. I really didn't suffer from overprotection. Dad always walked around the camp surrounded by a whole gang of children, and I was not among them. In the evenings, watching movies, next to him, under the blanket, always sat 2 children on each side, but there I was absent. I generally wanted to have as little attention to his person and did everything for this. I could live in my dad's rooftop house at all, sleep as much as you want, eat when you want, walk around the camp in a quiet hour, but I was very bored. And I preferred to get up neither light nor dawn, rush to charge, then stomp on the ruler, get out of the house or sweep the territory, but be in the squadron, being its full member. Sometimes it was not easy in moral terms. Very often I heard from children, and sometimes from counselors, you think once you are the daughter of the head of the camp so you can do everything. Can I behaved like all normal children, naughty like all normal children, but I got, as a rule, much more, including from the dad. If, as a small, 4-5 years, I really sometimes enjoyed their position and drove the other children from the swing, and answering the question, "Who are you?" and proudly declared, "I am the daughter of the camp commander." Then, by the time I began to live in the squadron I had one privilege to wear for all in the dining room a new batch of food, because the other kids just shy to do it. I do not know what the good soul of the cook thought of me when I came to her for the 3rd time for cutlets and for the 7th time for jelly. I lived in the unit almost from a very young age. That is, up to 7 years. I, of course, came with my mother to the camp only for the weekend, but when I was 7, I began to stay in the camp for the whole season and already lived in the unit. Each squad had its own charms. For example, 2 youngest did not run on charge to the stadium, but they did it under the guidance counselors directly near the house where the children lived. But when I was in the 4th squad, our house in which we lived was the furthest from the place where the morning exercises took place. And I kept thinking how unfair it was. Well, why the most senior squad has to run to do the exercises very little time, and we, the youngest, had to run from the far corner of the camp on the football field. Besides doing a whole circle on it and only then line up for a warm-up under the guidance of coach. After physical education, all groups ran up to the cases and were engaged in sanitary and hygienic procedures, then changed clothes in a ceremonial form and went on a morning ruler. I have been in many summer camps. As a rule, the children become during the line in the form of a square. Children were built on a ruler, like the rays of the sun. In the beginning, each group chose a name and motto. For example, one of the younger groups was called Orleanoc, and her motto was Orleanoc soar above the sun. Another group was called Comrade, and the children chose the motto, Comrade help out. Only the first group always had the same name and the same motto. It was a tradition. All the pioneers knew about it and really wanted to get into the first group as soon as possible, because it was the oldest group and it had a lot of privileges. And that's when all the guys lined up with beams going in different directions from the rostrum and began roll call. The chairman of the board squad's summer camp called first group. He approached the chair and said, "Group," and all the children of the first group shouted in unison, "Danko." Living and working under the motto, and again we all shouted, "Burn so brightly as the heart of Danko," and the president added, "On the line built." Then the chairman of the second group left, and so there was a roll call up to the smallest, the 7th group. Children in chorus shouted at first the name, and then the motto. And after that, the chairman of council Oliver team reported to the senior pioneer leader that camp on a ruler is constructed, and, as a rule, after us told that waits for us this fine summer day. For example, someone went on a one-day trip, someone in the evening participated in an amateur competition, and of course, the whole camp immediately after breakfast went to swim in the River Isham. And sometimes, in particularly hot weather, this wonderful event happened twice a day. The most favorite entertainment of the children of the camp really was swimming in the river. After breakfast, after cleaning the area, all units went together to the river. We had to go there for 15 minutes, first through the forest, then past the camp, a young railwayman, then past the camp birch. Then we went through a pine forest, and here in front of you a gorgeous view from a small cliff on Isham. Our river is not too large, about 50 meters wide, but below the cliff is the beautiful beach, where we all camp walk safely down. The bathing place was fenced with a picket fence, and no one was allowed to swim beyond its territory. And yet I had one privilege. Swimming for all units held under the scheme. 10 minutes to the beach, 5 minutes in the water, and children are not too liked, because the water was still cool. And you only have 5 minutes, you get used to the temperature, as I heard the whistle and everybody had to go ashore and bask in the hot sand. And only the first group was allowed to swim as long as you like. I was allowed to do the same. My dad told a counselor, "Let the swim. Nothing will happen." My personal bathing schedule was the envy of all the children. Of course, no one could become another child of the head of the pioneer camp. So all the children sought to get into the first squad and even indicated in the ticket overstated age. Most of the guys loved the rest in the pioneer camp, and came there from year to year. There ain't fun, there is well fed, there is easy to breathe clean forest air, and there was a lot of fun activities, but sometimes the camp got super home children. They began literally from the first day to cry and ask to go home. As a rule, such children were taken away by their parents on their first visit to the camp. But some especially impatient children tried to escape on their own. This was not easy, because the city would have to walk 15 kilometers, but from time to time such attempts were repeated.